You think blood runs thicker than water? I used to believe that. Until the day I signed those papers in a sterile attorney's office in downtown Boston, sealing away my grandparents' $3 million legacy from the very people who'd given me life. The ink was barely dry when I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, my heart pounding not from fear, but from a quiet rage that had been simmering for years. That moment, the one where I chose protection over loyalty, marked the beginning of a war I never wanted, but one I'd fight to the bitter end. My name is Sophia Reynolds, and on that fateful afternoon, as leaves swirled around my feet on Beacon Street, I wasn't just a fresh law school graduate from Harvard. I was the architect of my own family's destruction. The ceremony at Harvard Law had been a blur of crimson robes and proud speeches, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the attorney's words like a broken record. This trust is bulletproof. Sophia, once it's done, no one touches it without your say-so. My grandparents, Edward and Clara Thompson, had sat in the audience, their faces etched with the kind of weary pride that comes from a lifetime of quiet sacrifices. They'd raised me in their stately brownstone in Boston's Back Bay since I was 8. After my parents decided that their endless hustle for quick cash was more pressing than parenting. But that morning, before the pomp and circumstance, I'd met with attorney Elena Vasquez in her high-rise office, overlooking the Charles River. The documents were thick, laden with clauses about irrevocable transfers and fiduciary duties. "You're sure about this?" she'd asked, her voice steady but probing. I nodded, signing without a tremor. The house, worth $1.5 million alone with its original hardwood floors and bay windows, grandfather's diversified stock portfolio from his days as a financial advisor, grandmother's prized collection of early 20th century jewelry and silver. Altogether, a nest egg built over 60 years of frugality and foresight. It was all now shielded in a trust, with me as the sole trustee. My grandparents kept lifetime access, but no sales, no loans, no manipulations without my explicit approval. As I walked across that stage later, diploma in hand, I glanced at my family. Grandparents beaming, parents fidgeting with their phones, my younger sister Mia already scanning the crowd like she was pricing out the room. They had no clue I'd just dismantled their greedy dreams. The seed of doubt had planted itself 8 months earlier, during a tense family brunch at the brownstone. My parents, Victor and Diane Reynolds, had shown up unannounced, a red flag in itself. They only materialized when the scent of opportunity wafted their way. "Mom, Dad," my father had said, buttering his toast with exaggerated care, "this place is a lot to handle at your age. The upkeep, the taxes, maybe it's time for something easier, like a condo in Florida." I watched grandmother's knuckles whiten around her teacup, her polite smile masking the hurt. "We're fine, Victor," she replied softly. But my mother pressed on, her eyes gleaming with calculation. "You could sell high now. Really live it up. No more worrying about repairs or winters here." It wasn't concern, it was appetite. I'd seen it before, the way they eyed the house like a lottery ticket, mentally flipping it for profit. That night, alone in my old room with its creaky floorboards and view of the garden, the silence pressed in. Why now? Why the sudden push? It hit me, they weren't planning for my grandparents' comfort. They were plotting for their inheritance. Growing up in that brownstone was like being wrapped in a warm blanket against the storm of my parents' chaos. The house stood solid on a quiet, tree-shaded street, its facade whispering stories of old Boston money. I remember arriving there at 8, backpack slung over my shoulder, after my parents dumped me off for what was supposed to be a weekend but stretched into forever. They were off to Miami, chasing some real estate flip that promised riches but delivered only subpoenas and empty promises. "We'll be back soon," Kiddo, my father had said, ruffling my hair without meeting my eyes. They weren't. Grandmother had pulled me inside, her arms smelling of lavender and fresh-baked scones. This is your home now, Sophia, she'd whispered. Grandfather set up my room with the antique desk where he'd later teach me to balance checkbooks and dream big. While my parents ricocheted from one failed venture to another, pyramid schemes, shady investments, always one step ahead of creditors, I sank roots into stability. Grandmother taught me to arrange flowers from the garden, to value heirlooms for their history, not their resale. Grandfather shared tales of his immigrant parents from Ireland, emphasizing hard work over shortcuts. In contrast, visits with my parents were jarring, cramped motels, fast food wrappers, arguments echoing through thin walls. Victor was forever this close to the jackpot. Diane chased fleeting joys with credit cards she never paid. They had Mia when I was 13, during a brief stable phase, but she grew up in their vortex, learning to charm, to deceive, to see family as leverage. I started noticing the cracks during college breaks. Mia, at 16, would wander the brownstone, fingering silver candlesticks and asking, "How much you think this is worth?" "Grandpa?" My parents encouraged it, chuckling about her sharp eye. But it wasn't cute, it was predatory. Holidays became battlegrounds of subtle digs. You two look tired, maybe downsize, or heard the market's booming, cash in while you can. The betrayal stung deepest because it was silent at first, wrapped in feigned care. I kept quiet, observing. But the pain built like pressure in a fault line. Then came the incident that shattered my illusions, overhearing them in the garden during Easter. Once the old man's out, Clara won't last, Mia whispered. We get power of attorney. Handle it all. For her own good, my mother added, her voice cold as steel. They weren't mourning, they were strategizing. That night, the silence in my room wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating, heavy with unspoken wounds. How could blood turn so toxic? By my final year at Harvard, the manipulations escalated. Phone calls from my parents multiplied, each laced with insidious doubt. Dad, you forgot our anniversary, everything okay? Or Mom, that neighbor's kids had to step in, we're here if needed. They were sowing seeds for a competency challenge. The tipping point was the story of our neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly. Grandmother shared it over tea, her voice trembling. Her daughter convinced the court she was senile after one mix-up with bills. Sold the house, stuck her in a home. But she was fine. Sophia, sharp as a tack. I visited Mrs. Donnelly in that bleak facility, her eyes held lucid fury, trapped by her own child's greed. It mirrored my nightmare. That week, I consulted attorneys, learning about trusts as shields against familial vultures. Elena Vasquez cut through the legalese. You're not protecting against incapacity, you're guarding against false claims of it. We mapped it out, an irrevocable trust, backed by medical evals proving my grandparents' soundness. Convincing them was agony, showing proof of my parents' past cons, forged loans from relatives. Vanished heirlooms broke their hearts. Our own flesh, grandfather murmured, aging in an instant. But they signed, their resolve hardening over the quiet betrayal. Meanwhile, my parents schemed oblivious, distracted by a biotech scam promising millions. Mia dropped out of college to join, dreaming of penthouses. A pocket dial revealed their callousness. The house alone's a mill, arts extra. Chicago loft for me, Mia laughed. They saw deadlines, not people. I documented it all: emails, calls, Massachusetts one-party consent helped, inquiries to appraisers. Elena connected me to a forensic accountant who traced their trail. Aunts bilked, uncles defrauded. A pattern of ruin. Predators, he said flatly. The hurt twisted deeper. This wasn't impulse, it was calculated. Eroding the family illusion I'd clung to as graduation loomed. We fortified. Cognitive tests confirmed my grandparents' acuity. Grandmother outscored most in her bracket. We installed cloud cameras, inventoried assets. But intel from a PI revealed my parents' offensive. They'd hired a sleazy estate challenger, requesting medical records to build a case. They're claiming undue influence on you, Elena warned. The rage simmered. They'd paint me the villain? We countered with a restraining order petition, citing harassment and fraud. Grandfather's nod sealed it. I'm done fearing my blood. Filed pre-graduation. It hung like a storm cloud. The stroke hit in August, a humid night shattering our fragile peace. Grandfather collapsed in the kitchen. Paramedics rushed him to Mass General. Moderate. Recoverable. But the vulnerability was raw. My parents descended like locusts, feigning grief while probing. Strokes mess with judgment. Right? Their lawyer, Harlan Croft, arrived with POA forms. Just sign. Dad, will manage. Grandfather's whisper, no, ignited the standoff. I summoned our team, psychiatrist for eval, Elena for backup. The room crackled with tension. My mother's accusatory glare burned. You're isolating them, she hissed. But evidence mounted. Their forged credit lines planted Dr. Doubts. The siege dragged shifts at bedside. Whispers of abuse claims against me. APS cleared us swiftly. Lucky to have you. Then the break-in, while we were hospital-bound. They rifled the study, photographing pre-trust docs. Stakes skyrocketed. $3 million fueled their frenzy. Grandmother's resolve snapped. Cut them out, whatever it takes. The order passed, revealing the trust. Their fury erupted in countersuits. Sophia manipulated them. Witnesses bribed. Smears leaked. We retaliated with dossiers, unpaid loans, $250,000 plus. Forgeries. Victim testimonies. The fake will we uncovered? Masterful. But traced to a disgraced notary. In court, grandfather testified. Voice steady. I know a thief when I see one, raised him. The judge expanded the order. No contact. 500 feet buffer. But Victor snarled post-ruling, will ruin you. The price weighed heavy, lost sleep. Eroded trust in humanity, but the wound drove me. They'd abandoned me once. I wouldn't let them devour more. Criminal charges followed. Forgery. Theft. Abuse. Arrests at their dingy motel. Mia as accessory. They bailed. Then escalated a brazen driveway invasion with a U-Haul and goons. Waving another forged will. Grandmother brandished the unloaded antique pistol. Off my land. Sirens wailed. Elena streamed it live. Sloppy dates exposed the lie. Forgery kit purchases sealed it. Federal upgrade for interstate fraud. Handcuffed. Victor spat venom. You're no daughter. Mia begged. I turned away. The betrayal's scar throbbing. They fled bail. Caught at the border. Sentencing, 15 to 18 years each. Victor's final glare held no remorse. Only loss. Mia pled down probation. Therapy now rebuilding in Ohio. Her letter apologetic, you stopped the cycle. Assets liquidated, house sold. Proceeds secured, new secure condo for grandparents. Their thriving grandfather gardens. Grandmother tutors. I practice elder law, shielding others from similar scars. The revenge? Not sweet, but necessary. It cost illusions of family, left psychic wounds that ache in silence. But I'd pay it again to honor the ones who truly loved, against the blood that betrayed.